Are we on the brink of a new digital revolution in global trade and commerce? Well, today on Tech Talks Daily, my guest Alex is going to enlighten us on the transformative world of e-invoicing. And as countries increasingly mandate e-invoicing and businesses worldwide adapt, understanding this shift is crucial. And my guest Alex is a key figure from the European Commission's e-invoicing technical advisory group and a board member of the Digital Business Networks Alliance. What I'm trying to say is he brings a wealth of knowledge about how e-invoicing is reshaping everything from trade, enhancing compliance, and driving economic efficiency. So today I want to unravel how this digital evolution is befitting businesses and what it means for the future of global commerce. And we're going to do all that in a language everyone can understand. I just want to take a time out to express my gratitude to everyone who supports our mission of delivering content every day to 140,000 listeners across 165 countries. I'm grateful for the support that allows me to maintain this daily tech podcast. And it's also an opportunity to talk about the fact that legacy managed file transfer tools are dated and lack the security that today's remote workforce often demands. And companies that continue relying on that outdated technology, they can put their sensitive data at risk. So if security breaches are keeping you up at night, why not sleep soundly with Kiteworks MFT Suite? Because their software security hardening includes an ongoing bounty program, regular penetration testing, and with one-click appliance updates, staying secure has actually never been easier. It doesn't have to be complicated. So while other solutions might leave you vulnerable, Kiteworks offers military-grade protection, so there's no need to compromise on security. So step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks by visiting kiteworks.com to get started. That's right, kiteworks.com to get started today. It's time to shift gears somewhat, introduce the person that you've all been waiting for today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Alex in conversation today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Alex. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thanks for having me, Neil. Absolute pleasure to be here. So I'm Alex Baulf. I'm the Vice President of E-Invoicing at Avalara. Avalara is a leading SaaS solution provider. We provide fast, easy, accurate ways to manage transaction taxes like sales tax, VAT, GST, customs duty. We have cloud-based compliance solutions that automate business processes. We help businesses of all sizes achieve compliance, reduce their risk, streamline their processes. I'm the product owner, the product lead for our e-invoicing solution. This is our next generation SaaS solution to meet the growing trend of e-invoicing globally. I lead a team of product managers across 6 different countries, and I work with governments, tax authorities, other influencer bodies all around the world, talking about the future direction of travel for tax compliance, digitalization of compliance, and of course, e-invoicing.
Well, there's so much to unpack there. And one of the things I try and do every episode is take an area that people may have heard of or maybe have heard of and don't associate technology with and try and demystify it. So just to set the scene for our conversation today, can you just explain exactly what e-invoicing is and how it represents this next digital era of global trade and commerce? Because it feels like a real opportunity here.
Yeah, absolutely. So an e-invoice is a digital document. So if you think about today, most businesses trade with invoices that are on paper or PDF, very, very visual, really built for manual processes. Maybe there's an accounts payable team manually typing in the data into an accounts package. Some businesses will scan documents. Others, may use OCR technologies, RPA to get data into a structured format. But really what an e-invoice is a digital document that has structured machine-readable data. So the invoice can be interpreted, processed by a system. So, we're talking about things like XML. A couple of main types here. There's the UBL, Universal Business Language. There's also the cross-industry invoice, the CII. But this is purely structured data. There is like a hybrid version of that. So a PDF A3, which is to most people looks and feels the same. It's a normal PDF. It's as close to as business as usual as you could get, but it has embedded XML in it. So it's the best of both worlds. It can be read by both a human and a machine as well. So e-invoicing is the exchange of that digital document, an exchange of any invoice between businesses and their customers. You typically have a consistent format of that document and consistent content, because that content needs to be interpreted, processed. So typically relying on very formalized code lists. And those invoices can be shared on networks across the globe, like an open network like Peppol. We're seeing a global trend where tax authorities actually become that distribution portal in the middle. You know, they have technology to receive an invoice, to even approve it, sign it, validate it, and then in some countries actually send that on to the trading partner.
And just to understand the business value of what we're talking about here, how are you seeing the rise of e-invoicing impacting things like international trade? And what changes are businesses experiencing as a result? Is there a movement of sorts here?
Absolutely. You know, this is a real global trend. You know, we are seeing e-invoicing being adopted in every corner of the globe, every continent. But I'd say it's speeding up global trade. A lot of the historic processes at the customs border, or just the normal kind of procure to pay processes, involve a lot of paper, a lot of documents, a lot of manual processes. What e-invoicing does is it really streamlines that. It means that, you know, documents, paper, PDFs, they're no longer getting stuck in someone's inbox on email. They're not getting lost in the mail. They're not being reliant on a team of people processing those. We now have the ability to have complete end-to-end touchless processing. So documents can move across countries, across borders very, very quickly. They can be interpreted, processed, validated, and even paid in a touchless manner, all automated based on that machine-readable data.
And I've had experience of those invoices getting stuck in spam folders and junk folders, so I know exactly what you're talking about there. And for any startup founder listening, or business leader, a small, medium, or even large-size enterprise, what would you say are the main benefits of e-invoicing for businesses?
Lots of benefits. I suppose that the first thing is it allows a business to carry on doing business in a country where there is a mandate in place to use e-invoicing. And this is a huge issue, because governments are bringing in e-invoicing mandates, forcing companies to adopt it, forcing companies to use technology to produce the relevant invoices in the relevant format to meet standards, connecting to the relevant government endpoints. So without being able to comply, you are really shut out of a market, because if you can't issue an invoice, if you can't get paid, if you can't receive an invoice from your vendor, you know, the business kind of grinds to a halt. So by being compliant, by being able to issue e-invoices, suddenly you're reducing the risk of penalties. You're able to trade with your trading partners in international markets. But also because e-invoicing is really driven by data and the quality of that data, what we tend to see is it brings up the overall quality of a company's data in their systems. You know, typically in the past, a lot of the master data that the businesses hold around their vendors, around their customers, is pretty dirty. Yeah. And you know, people just got on with it, and you know, maybe they're aware of that, periodically cleanse it. But the difference is within e-invoicing, if certain data is wrong, it's missing, it's not in the right format, it will be rejected. The computer will just say no. A government platform, a portal, a tax authority will reject that invoice straight away, which means it won't be received by the counterparty, by the trading partner. So I think there's a great benefit there. There's certainly a benefit around security, reducing the risk of fraud. E-invoicing is built on encryption, digital signatures, secure networks. They're really the staples of e-invoicing. And so businesses can be identified by their unique digital certificate or a digital signature. And so a tax authority and a trading partner can really be really clear and confident on the digital identity, the authenticity of that issuer. So hopefully, that does reduce fraud.
And after doing a little research before you joined me on the podcast today, I was reading how e-invoicing is also rapidly becoming mandatory in various geographies around the world. So why is that? And what are the implications for companies operating in these regions?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's no secret that tax revenue is more important than ever for governments around the world. In post-pandemic, budgets need to be met. So tax authorities are focusing in on VAT, the VAT gap. So this is the amount of tax, specifically VAT, that isn't collected due to errors, non-compliance, and specifically fraud as well. In the EU alone, at the last count, that was around 93 billion euros per year. Globally, that figure could be a lot closer to about $500 billion. So that's a lot of money, a lot of tax revenue being left on the table. So tax authorities are finding ways, how can we collect more tax? How can we reduce that gap? And they realize that the traditional summary tax return, like a VAT, GST return, it doesn't provide enough transparency. It doesn't show tax authorities the individual transactions, and it doesn't give them the opportunity to spot errors and fraud. It's really too little, too late. So tax authorities see e-invoicing as a way of sitting in the middle of a transaction. They have the ability to review a transaction, the invoice. They can run their own analytics. They can run various checks and approvals on that document before it's then sanctioned and cleared to be sent to a customer. So they're getting all of those data points. They can use that, for trend analysis. They can get insights into individual industries, all the way down, to a postcode, to a zip code.
And my research about you also revealed that you're a member of the European Commission's e-invoicing technical advisory group and the Digital Business Networks Alliance. Now, I'm not sure how much you can share here, but are there any learnings or insights you can share about the development and the adoption of new invoicing standards too?
Yeah, of course. So e-invoicing, because we're looking at sending a structured document between trading partners, interoperability is key. So what does interoperability mean? Well, it means everyone needs to be able to receive, understand, interpret the document that's being exchanged. So they must know what the data means. And so the European Commission is taking a really key role there. The Commission developed a European e-invoicing standard several years ago, predominantly for public procurement, business to government supplies looking to digitalize public procurement. But this European standard is now being leveraged by a lot of countries and governments across Europe and actually even beyond Europe. But it needs to stay up to date. It needs to stay fresh. It still needs to meet the needs of businesses as more and more companies are bought into the e-invoicing net, either on a voluntary basis because they want to achieve process efficiencies, they want to trade electronically, with their trading partners, or more likely they're being mandated to do this by governments and tax authorities in their home countries or where they do business. The standard needs to meet all the different use cases. It needs to meet the different industries across Europe. So a lot of work's being carried on to update that standard, make sure it's future fit. And then there's legislation called VAT in the Digital Age or VIDA. And one of those pillars that legislation is introducing is around e-invoicing and more harmonization, ensuring interoperability. And it's going to break down the barriers for both companies and countries within the EU to adopt e-invoicing. And then if we kind of go across the other side of the Atlantic, the US, I'd say a very different experience there, because the US is quite unique. The US is a country, but there's a very strong state and local approach, particularly to tax and legislation. And so never say never, but there's very unlikely to be a federal mandate mandating e-invoicing in the US. It's likely to come more at a state-by-state level. And that means in the US, the real impetus around getting e-invoicing and moving to harmonized standards is really going to come from businesses themselves. So there was a market pilot involving the Business Payments Coalition. The Federal Reserve banks were involved. A lot of e-invoice service providers, ERPs, other tech companies, banks, payment processing companies, different stakeholders from across the ecosystem and supply chain. And the plan was to create a common e-invoice standard for the US and actually wider North American market, because the US's two biggest trading partners are Canada and Mexico. So they wanted to create a standard that would be interoperable and meet the local requirements in those countries too. And so the good news is they had a market pilot. It was a huge success. And that pilot then evolved into the Digital Business Network Alliance. I'm on the board of the DBNA. We're a not-for-profit, but really looking to encourage the adoption of that national standard and creating what we call a four-corner network. So moving away from the current position in the US, where there's actually hundreds of different formats, and the way most businesses exchange invoices with each other, it tends to be through proprietary procurement networks, AP networks, where both parties need to have the same provider. It's not very scalable. It's really restricted the growth and adoption of e-invoicing. So the DBNA's new B2B digital highway, using this four-corner network, connecting accredited service providers together, using a new national standard for e-invoicing, will hopefully really spread e-invoicing, encourage businesses to adopt it, remove barriers. And it goes back to my very first point, great interoperability across the country and across North America.
So on behalf of business leaders that could be listening anywhere in the world, especially those in geographies where it is already mandatory, how can they better prepare for that transition to mandatory e-invoicing? And what steps should they be taking now to ensure a smooth transition and a smooth compliance?
It's a great question, Neil. So the first thing I'd say is to just embrace and accept that e-invoicing is the clear direction of travel. This is here now. Even if it isn't in place today in a certain country, it probably will be in the next 2 or 3 years. So what does that mean? Well, it means awareness is key. Monitoring legislation, monitoring all the new mandates that are coming out. Where do you do business? Where are your customers? Where are your trading partners? Putting together a roadmap and aligning that with a project plan, but also keeping your stakeholders up to date. So, you will need technology to meet e-invoicing. It's just too complex to do it yourself. So plan accordingly, bring in different stakeholders, IT, finance, procurement, tax. E-invoicing is going to touch so many different areas, departments of a business. And then I'd say, think strategically, because this is the clear direction of travel, because of the quantum of countries that are bringing in the invoicing. It's no longer sustainable or scalable just to look at this as a local issue. And, maybe 5-10 years ago, when we saw individual countries bring in the invoicing, a business would just say, actually, I have a local finance manager in country. They will select a local provider. We'll get a local bolt-on. We'll find a solution to be compliant. with the amount of countries introducing e-invoicing now, you don't want to end up with this Frankenstein of IT infrastructure, different connections, different APIs, different solutions all over the place. It's just not scalable at all. So think strategically and look to invest in a single global platform where possible. That really allows a business to be future-proofing, maintaining only one single solution, and then also creating critical mass around training, awareness. This may be rolled out on a country-by-country basis, but you're building up knowledge about e-invoicing. You can share best practice throughout your company, throughout your business. And then finally, I'd say don't just view e-invoicing as a compliance requirement. Of course, there is the stick of a tax authority. If you don't comply, you will receive penalties. You may not be able to recover VAT on your invoices. As I said at the start, you may actually be locked out of doing business in a certain country. But e-invoicing also brings a lot of benefits. So you should look at the carrots as well. The streamlining of processes, particularly accounts payable, accounts receivable. Ultimately, e-invoicing will reduce costs. Now, there's been a couple of recent surveys in the field. There was a stat from Deloitte in Australia saying the price of a typical invoice, paper PDF, from producing it, exchanging it, processing it, was around 30 Australian dollars. But an e-invoice was about a third of the price. And France, when the French government announced an e-invoicing mandate for French companies, they said, well, a typical invoice is about 10 euros, but the price of an e-invoice is less than a postage stamp. So because you're removing all the different human touches, a lot of the manual processes, storage, archiving, printing, posting, there's real cost savings to be had. And as technology improves, we're going to see further automation, particularly when you inject things like machine learning and AI into the equation.
Wow, some big stats in there. And as someone that is right in the heart of this space, you've probably had many, many questions about this topic, people asking you for help, etc. What are the main challenges that companies are facing when implementing e-invoicing, and how can they overcome some of these obstacles? I would imagine there's quite a few trending questions that come your way.
Yeah, there really are. I think because invoicing is such a core component of just doing business, there is an assumption that an ERP system, an accounting system will naturally support e-invoicing. And while that may be true in certain markets, you're never really going to have an ERP supporting all global e-invoicing mandates, formats, document types, all the different strict regulatory requirements out of the box. It's too complex, really. So, that's one of the first realities that businesses need to remember. And so then it's actually going out to market, really identifying, is there a single scalable global provider that covers my needs now, but also in the future? When it comes to implementing, a lot of e-invoicing, it isn't plug and play. It's really focused in on the source data. So, you may need support with integration. Might need system integrators to help you. Because data is so important, you may need some support cleansing that data, making sure you have the right data in the right format to meet e-invoicing. Of course, that can be streamlined. A lot of providers like Avalara, we are creating connectors. We're working with our ERP partners, Oracle, NetSuite, Workday, others, so we can connect to their systems. We understand the data in the source system. We can transform that to what we need to prepare a compliant e-invoice. And the other barrier, I suppose, is time. With the quantum of mandates, this requires a lot of planning and for businesses to be proactive. And at the moment, some countries are postponing their mandates. They're giving businesses a bit more time to prepare. But my advice would be, don't pause your project. make the most of this additional time. Use that to plan, to prepare, to test, to work with not only your advisors, but also your trading partners. Communications with your suppliers, your vendors, your customers are really critical, because if you're suddenly going to change how you interact with them, how you issue or receive an invoice to get paid, it's really important that everyone's clear and everyone's compliant.
And if I was to ask you to look into my virtual crystal ball, looking ahead, how do you see the future of e-invoicing evolving? And are there any trends that businesses should be aware of to stay ahead in the digital transformation of global trade? Because the speed of technological change really seems to be moving fast at the moment. But anything that excites you or that you're seeing on the road ahead?
Yeah, another great question. So I think, by 2030, virtually every country will have e-invoicing in place. We're going to see the next 5 years unprecedented growth, adoption, and mandating of e-invoicing. I think we will see, more consistency in terms of formats, in terms of the models adopted by countries. We'll probably see the adoption more of PEPL. I mentioned PEPL briefly at the start. So is a network built on the European e-invoicing standard. It's decentralized, which means you don't have to have the same service provider as your trading partner. We're starting to see tax authorities adopt PEPL as part of their e-invoicing mandate. So actually, Malaysia adopted e-invoicing, started a mandate on the 1st of August. That will leverage the PEPL network for the exchange of the invoice between businesses after the government has approved it. We're likely to see the spread of PEPL across the globe. It's already adopted across the EU, the UK, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore. We'll probably see that extend to Africa and Middle East in the next few years. I think we're going to continue to see the use of QR codes to aid automation processing. But actually, an interesting thing I've seen in a number of countries is the ability for a consumer, the general public, just to get out their phone, scan a QR code on a receipt, and that will validate that invoice. It will validate the receipt. Has the business, has the cafe, the burger joint being compliant? Is it reporting that invoice to the tax authority? So really, this is bringing the general public in as tax inspectors, which I think is quite fun and an interesting trend. And then I think we will see more automation. Maybe at the moment, a lot of businesses are just looking to meet the letter of the law in terms of any invoicing mandate rather than really embracing the benefits. So I think, the real future trend is going to be, it's a no-brainer. Okay, yes, you may be mandated to issue an invoice in a certain format to a certain tax authority, but really businesses will really embrace the benefits. It's just part of the next logical step in the digitalization journey. And businesses will want to have the same insights into their data, into their supply chain, into their procurement as a tax authority will get with that same data. So I think we'll see increased use of data analytics, AI as well, machine learning on that increased, more granular transactional data that businesses now have. I was just thinking, I keep saying e-invoice, but really that's probably not the right word to use, because there are so many different document types throughout a supply chain, throughout our procurement process. If we look at kind of orders, dispatch notes, arrival notes, receipts, there are actually over 100 different documents within UBL, Universal Business Language, one of the XML standards I mentioned at the start. So I think it's only natural that businesses will start adopting more e-documents. It may start with the e-invoice, but actually companies have the ability to digitalize the entire end-to-end procurement process or order-to-cash process. So we will see e-orders, e-dispatch notes, e-way bills. I think within the world of customs, import declarations, there's a lot of paperwork at the moment, very manual, quite high costs for every shipment. if that digitalizes, which I think is the next logical step, that will save not only paper and trees, but also should save businesses significant amounts.
Incredibly cool. Exciting times ahead. And thanks so much for demystifying the world of e-invoicing with me today. And as a small thank you, I want to see if there's something we can do for you now, because some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or maybe even listened to this podcast on occasion. So is there a person you'd love to have a private breakfast or lunch with? He or she might just hear this, but let's see what we can manifest together. Who would it be and why?
Very good question. So I think I'm going to go big. So I am actually going to say Bill Gates.
Yeah.
That founder of Microsoft. So about 30 years ago, a very young me read a book called The Road Ahead, Bill Gates' book on the future of tech and specifically the information superhighway. And actually, I reread this a few weeks ago, and he starts talking about EDI, electronic data interchange, which was the foundation of e-invoicing, the exchange of invoice data between machines. So I'd love to know about the Microsoft story. I'd love to get his insights. But I'd also just like to sit down and say, look, 30 years later, what do you think now? What predictions did you make came true? Which ones have exceeded that? And more importantly, where are we going for the next 30 years? Data, the internet, automation, it's really going to impact how businesses do business and how they exchange documents, data. So be really, really keen to sit down with Bill, have breakfast, and just get those views.
Wow, go big or go home. I absolutely love that. What a great choice. I will throw that out into the ether. Let's see what the universe can offer both of us there. We'll see what happens. And for everyone listening, what's the best place for them to find you or your team online if they've got any other questions, or just dive a little bit deeper, find more information about anything we discussed today?
Absolutely. So, please follow me on LinkedIn. If you search for Alex Baulf and follow me there, you can, of course, reach out to me there through a message, or please visit avalara.com. You'll see all our different solutions, and you also have the ability to log a message and we can set up a meeting or call with our team, understand your business, understand your needs, and support you being compliant.
Well, again, thanks so much for talking about e-invoicing, the next digital era of global trade and commerce, and bringing to life exactly what e-invoicing is, demystifying it, talking about how it's impacting trade and the actual benefits to businesses, and also for giving us a great breakfast date there. I'd love to see if we could manifest that one for you. But more than anything, just thank you for investing your time and sharing that with me today.
Thank you, Neil. Been an absolute pleasure.
Again, big thank you to Alex for shedding light on the crucial role of e-invoicing in modernising global trade and commerce. And today's discussion, for me, it not only highlighted the importance of embracing digital transformation, but also illustrated the practical steps businesses can take to adapt to this new standard. And as we look towards a future where e-invoicing becomes the norm, what are your thoughts on how this digital shift will continue to evolve and influence global trade dynamics? Now, I know you're all listening in 165 different countries, so there are a lot of diverse perspectives here, so I want you to share them with me by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, @NeilC.Hughes. But I am recording this podcast on an extremely hot day here in the UK, and for my friends in the US, we don't have things like air conditioning, so it's time for me to take a cold shower and cool myself down. Not a thought I intended to leave you with, but there you go. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.